my colleagues on the dais, Ranjit ji, Arun ji, Sushma ji, captains of industry, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to join you today for this event of Geo India 2024, and I believe this is the sixth in the series of India's premier South Asian Geosciences Conference and Exhibitions being organized by the Association of Petroleum Geologists in India. I am happy to note that the theme of this conference this year is exploring new dimensions of energy dynamics, which I believe is most appropriate given the current turbulent geopolitical situation, challenges of climate change, increasing energy demand, and renewable energy thrust. I want to take this opportunity to pick up on one or two themes that the chairman of the ONGC briefly touched upon. It's something which, for me, is a constant point of reflection. When do systems, I'm not talking about just us in India, in the energy sector, but when do systems start focusing on the need for reform and face up to the imperative of ensuring that that reform which is conceptualized is then implemented? And I can share with you that as a student of history, my experience is that the attention of the human mind goes in the direction of reform, but largely or mostly when we are in a crisis. That there is a converse of that when you are or you think that situation is very normal, then you tend to be complacent and say, you don't need to do anything. But when you are in a crisis, or you think some smart people somewhere think that a crisis is coming, then you are propelled into action. And I think that is also very much the situation that we have faced in this sector. I'm not trying to find fault. I'm not trying to give a political speech. Let me give you one example from the outside world. When was the current multilateral system of governance formed? It was formed when the Second World War was going on. I'm talking about 1945. Countries were still in the midst of the Second World War that they started saying, when the war is over, let us start off conceptualizing what the post-war order would look like. And then came the birth of the United Nations, then came the Bretton Woods Conference, which established the World Bank and the IMF, the Havana Charter, which gave rise to the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And as somebody who has been a civil servant working the multilateral system, we keep asking, when is the next real crisis coming so that we can reform the system? Because that 1945 system is no longer fit for purpose. So I don't want to suggest that you need another major outbreak of hostilities or a world war to reform the system. I hope that's not the case. But what is the situation that we are facing? The fact that we have a formidable 651.8 million metric tons of recoverable crude oil reserves and 1,138.6 billion cubic meters of recoverable natural gas reserves nestled within our sedimentary basins India should be a powerhouse of exploration and production. And yet, if you look at our sedimentary basin or basins, 3.5 million square kilometers, it is only very recently that we opened up the no-go area up to 99.9%. Why did we open it up now? One, I can quite confidently say that we now have a Prime Minister who understood this, and we have an industry which understood the magnitude of the challenge. But if global oil prices had remained comfortable, we had taken the eye off the ball on E&P totally. Even when global oil prices increased and geopolitical turbulence was beginning in a big way, we realized, somewhat late I think, that we have no option but to energize and work the E&P sector. And today I'm very happy that even though we are exploring only about a limited portion, but yes, we have gone up from 6% of the sedimentary basin exploitation in 2014 to 10%. And when we finish the current rounds of OALP, Open Acreage Licensing Policy, we will take it up to 16%. And as Arun said, some of the reforms that were initiated facilitated that. I mean very clearly the opening up of that sedimentary basin, the no-go areas, other reforms we've carried out, which are in the public domain, the fact that we are revising and tweaking the law which governed this sector, which belongs to the era of the 1940s. It's taken 60 years plus to 70 years to revise that law. So clearly we have been amiss somewhere. But I think today we are trying to catch up and make up for the somewhat tardy or slow focus and implementation in the past. Let me share with you some of the reforms, and since I'm picking this up because Arunji mentioned the reform, and I think there's more to come. We improved the ease of doing business in the Indian exploration and production sector. We simplified 37 processes requiring approvals, and we compressed them from 37 into 18, of which 9 were put up for self-certification. The Oil Fields Regulation and Development Amendment Bill introduced this year aims to ensure policy stability for oil and gas producers and allow international arbitration and extend lease periods. We have reduced the no-go areas in the exclusive economic zones by almost 99%. We have shifted from the earlier production sharing contracts to revenue sharing contract policy. We have formed a joint working group comprising representatives from private E&P operators, national oil companies, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and DGH, Director General of Hydrocarbons, to address industry concerns and improve the ease of doing business in this sector. We are ensuring data availability of Indian sedimentary basins to investors, such as the National Seismic Program in onshore areas, the EEZ survey in offshore areas, and opening up of the Andaman Basin, upgradation of the NDR, etc. We are opening a data center within the University of Houston campus for ease of doing and viewing by foreign companies. We are setting up a dispute resolution mechanism to resolve various contractual matters. 25 disputes which were pending for more than 10 years have now been settled amicably. Conducting multi-client geoscientific surveys and ensuring coverage of the unappraised sedimentary basin by areas by 2D seismic survey. We are targeting appraisal of 100% sedimentary basinal area by 26, 27. Now, if you look at where we were till a few years ago and where we are hoping to go, I think that journey itself, in terms of empirical evidence, becomes clear. But there is something more that I want to share with you. I do monthly brainstorming sessions with our oil marketing companies, and we are beginning to look at areas like the one we had day before yesterday, artificial intelligence. And I must confess, I was a little surprised at the extent to which we have already embraced AI and machine learning and elements of the fourth industrial revolution. Yesterday, my colleague, the chairman of the ONGC, in a CII seminar, which was on public sector enterprises, said in many ways the OMCs are showing operational dynamism and efficiency which not only matches the private sector, but in some ways beats the private sector. To which I quipped, and I'm happy to repeat it, well, if you have a private sector company which is family owned, you'll still have interference. But if you have a well-run OMC, as our OMCs are, and you have a minister like me, you'll have zero interference. And I've said that repeatedly. And I say this openly now. You know, with all of you present here, I have one requirement. Let us make up for lost time on the E&P sector. Because everything else is doing well. Our consumption is rising. Our demand is growing at 3 times the global average. Today, something like 5.4 million barrels of crude are consumed in India every day. The figure that has been given as part of my notes is that it will go up to 7 million barrels in, 2030? Well, I'm frightening, because it's that's the nature of the increase. Today, 70 million people go to the retail outlets every day to fill up. So all that, the number of retail outlets is very large. Biofuel blending is taking place. I would never have imagined 3 years ago when I joined this ministry that our target of 10% will also be met by November 22. We met it 5 months in advance. Today, we are at 16.9% blending in our basic fuel. And the 20% target of 2030 we'll do by 2025. Now, these are all achievements we can be justifiably satisfied with. But I think the best is still to come. In the OALP bidding round 9, it has a special place in the OALP rounds. It had some special features, and I want to mention those. Area of about 1,36,596 square kilometer was offered to 28 blocks in 8 sedimentary basins, which is the largest area offered so far in a single bid round under OALP regime. Out of the 28 blocks on offer, 13 blocks with an area of 51,405 square kilometers, that is roughly 38% of the bids, came in what was earlier the no-go area. So just imagine, we were depriving ourselves of all that. And in OALP round 10, which I expect will be even more promising because we will have the new law in place by then, you will find that a much greater interest. For every, in the past we used to say, we have invited bids. Now we've got 2.4 or 2.5 bids per bid made, per 2.8 offers per bid. So clearly there is change. I travel to most, at least the more important energy events. I was in Gastech in Houston. I was in ADIPEC. And I can share with you that all the interlocutors from outside India that I meet with are actually serious about participating in the economic opportunities which our ongoing efforts are inviting. Our biggest national oil company has joined hands with private companies to submit a consortium bid. I think this is the first in OALP. A total of 68 bids received in 28 blocks. And the increase in OALP from 8 to 9 goes up from 1.3 bids to 2.4 bids. Clearly, there is a past history which we have to correct. Today, we are confident that there is much greater oil to be discovered, or as I keep saying, a Guyana to be discovered here. And we are acutely conscious that for the oil majors, for them to put in a commitment will require them to do some homework. So where we require help, I did this with Petrobras in Brazil, where we invited them to help in the seismic survey with, I think, Oil India. And we told them that you come in to provide technical services, we will incentivize you, we will compensate you, and if we strike, you can have the first right of refusal. We've had similar discussions with other oil majors, and I can share with you that I am confident that these processes will get intensified and we will move forward. On the other aspects of the energy scenario, with projects pertaining to hydrogen blending in natural gas pipelines, localization of electrolyzer-based technologies, promotion of biopathways for green hydrogen production being pursued aggressively, we are set to become a global champion in production and exports of hydrogen, and which is set to emerge as the hub for green hydrogen, which everybody will agree is the fuel of the future. Very recently, the Prime Minister hosted the Prime Minister of Bhutan, and I had the privilege of escorting him, or rather taking him on a green hydrogen bus, which has been produced jointly by Tata Motors and IOCL, and which is powered by the hydrogen fuel cell. Now, I believe that we are one of the first, perhaps the only country in the world which has such a demonstration vehicle. 15 or 20 of them are already providing services. I mean, we have I believe a 20,000 kilometers limit for licensing. Once you complete that, then you can license these, and more of these buses will be visible as we go along. I'm very happy. I expressed my appreciation to the organizers for including topics such as digitalization, ecosystems and geosciences, value creation through AI and ML, amongst a long list of topics in the panel discussion and plenary sessions that will aid our energy transformation journey. I must say, I'm not saying this just because I happen to be the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, or I like to call myself the Minister for Energy Transition, but I have great belief and faith that the innovative minds of geoscientists will bring the energy revolution in India and ensure that energy security to every citizen helps us meet the challenges of tomorrow. And before I conclude, let me go back to the need to reinforce the philosophy and psychology of reform. And I mean that seriously. This is a sector which I used to say is the lifeline of an economy. But the other day when we were in ADIPEC, the minister from the United Arab Emirates, Sultan Jaber, he called it the spinal cord. And I talked about energy being the spinal cord. Now I find that As a student of history, I find that term has come into all my speaking notes also. But that's true. It is both the lifeline and the spinal cord. Last year, the OMCs produced 19% of the country's revenue, which is no mean thing. If you look at the combined share of the public sector and the private sector in this area, if you look at the hard facts, there is a revolution taking place there. 70% of our vehicular traffic on the roads is two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Many of them have already shifted to or are moving in the direction of battery swap. If you look at the strides we are beginning to make now, I know we were late. Many countries in the world were late on critical minerals. One particular country saw the writing on the wall earlier and they went down that road. But I think we are making up for lost time. I met a group yesterday which is dealing with critical minerals in the state of Gujarat, and they've got, if I look at the kind of work that they're doing, I find startups coming to me and wanting to produce electrolyzers without membranes. The fascinating things are happening. BPCL and HPCL both have domestically produced electrolyzers. If you see the interests of the other major electrolyzer producers in the world, and I mean it literally. I was in a European country where one of the major companies had this massive electrolyzer on display, and lo and behold, they wanted the Indian companies to participate in order to finance that big project. So I believe whether it is the existing market, downstream, the growth, the where we will reach by 2030, 2040, clearly we have to anchor the transition safely. We have not in the last 2.5, 3 years that I've been associated had any problems on availability. Even when the situation was, in terms of climatic conditions, difficult, our oil companies and their representatives carried LPG cylinders on the roof, on their backs. Our LPG story is a fantastic one. In 2014, we had 14 crore connections. Today, our total number of connections is about 33 crores. If you look at our population, 140 crores, and you have 33 crore connections, 1 crore, one connection per household. That means if 4 people are getting served, we have nearly covered the entire population. And we are providing clean cooking gas for as little as 6-7 rupees a day to beneficiaries of the Ujjwala scheme, and for 15-16 rupees for non-beneficiaries. It's almost, I would say, at a price which doesn't impose any strain. And the Ujjwala scheme, I can tell you, it has ensured that the imbalance between the rural and the urban has been redressed. Out of the 10 crore plus Ujjwala connections, I think a large number are in the rural areas. Today, India can confidently say that the neglect that we allowed to creep in on E&P is being corrected. OALP 9 has started that. OALP 10 will further consolidate that. Our green transition on biofuels, biogas. I was very happy to find a private sector company the other day. I read a news item. They are going into 500 biogas plants. If you add that to what the OMCs are doing, I think the biogas story is also just getting ready to take off. Biofuels, I've already told you. And I think hydrogen, green hydrogen, is another area. I see electric vehicles roll out. I will see more collaborations taking place. And if we can get our act together on critical minerals, which I'm sure we will. So I think I want to conclude on that. I want to wish this conference the very best. I am glad that you have participation not only from domestic stakeholders, but our friends from outside the country are here. I extend a warm welcome to you, and I hope you have very fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.